cases, you literally feel like you're literally going to die if you do this.
Yeah.
But I think you have to.
Yeah.
And so you are dying. It's just a version of yourself that's dying. And then there's another one coming in. So this is me killing myself.
Yeah. Right now I have my kid's little toy car in front of me and it just reminds me like what do I want to do in this life where he's gonna look up at me or my daughters are gonna look up at me and like I'm like getting emotional. Like w what's gonna make them look internally and like want to become a better version of themselves? Welcome to the Live Well Lifestyle Podcast, where we believe that true transformation occurs from the inside out. My name is Ignacio Anzaldo, and this is Travis Gibson. Travis, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good, thanks.
Thousands of miles apart, but still here at the same time.
Yeah, it's 5 a.m. here, 5:30. What about over there?
3 hours later, so 8:30.
Nice.
I thank you for coming on so early. That's awesome.
Like for me, it's really, really exciting to be in this moment and like being in, I think we talk about it all the time, like being in the actual thing, being in the journey and like not so much focusing on the end goal, but like taking it step by step and building it like brick by brick, if that makes sense. And that's like I feel like every phone call we have is like a just a deep conversation about life and spirituality and fitness and you know thinking about things in a different way. So like I kind of want to know what you're feeling and what you're thinking and how that comes together in what we're doing now.
Yeah, and again, it's funny. I feel the same way, and especially lately, I've been having a lot more of these realizations as well. I mean, for the last 2 years, I would say I've been thinking about making videos, whether it's on social media or here, and the amount of tension and stress I've built up within myself of what am I going to talk about? What are we going to talk about? Are we going to
Yeah.
run out of things to say? All these different lies, if you will, that we just tell
Yeah.
ourselves to keep us in the same position where we're at because doing anything different is uncomfortable. And the more I just remove the one desire like you were talking about, but also the need to have something,
Yeah.
it makes the process more comforting and smooth. But I also feel like things work out in a much better way than you could have ever pre-planned for them to do to work out, right? I also
Yeah.
feel like you don't really allow synchronicities to come in and work in ways that are more beautiful than you could have ever pre-scripted or planned, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And we were talking about it the other day. It's like the remove for me, the big thing was like the removal of the expectation of whatever it is. And it sounds radical or crazy or whatever you want to call it, but like, and I know you understand it, but I feel like it's hard to have that conversation as a, a like a starter conversation with somebody. It's like, oh, what do you do? It's like, well, I try to remove all expectations in my life to enjoy the journey, you know? But that's what I love about like ha diving deeper into those conversations, especially on our phone calls and I mean we used to do it in person all the time, but I just feel like that need for depth is something that I definitely like yearn for and want in my life in so many different ways. But I think what we do too is like we add levity to the situation and make it fun and I think though the combination of those things is so important. And also it's like life isn't black and white. It's gray and messy and there's a bunch of things going on at the same time and yeah, so I agree with you in every way. I think it's not having these big desires, enjoying the process, and I think being open to like being uncomfortable and vulnerable with yourself, you just learn so much more about yourself. Like you're saying, like I don't like videos either. And in my profession, I have to start doing them as well. But it's just it's an interesting time that we're in. You
Right.
know?
Well, and to further expand on your question, which is how this all got started,
Yeah.
was being younger in teenage years. And I just started working out because I wanted to be better at sports. I wanted to be a better athlete. And then I
Yeah.
took sports as far as I could and realized maybe this isn't the route that I'm supposed to be on. And then I took a small portion of what I did for sports and then continued it on.
Yeah.
After sports, I kept working out. I wanted to stay an athlete in my mind or stay athletic, and working out was fun. And I always wanted to build a physique and look like a bodybuilder and look like these men that as kids,
Yeah,
are
we look up to.
for sure, whether it's
Yeah.
superheroes or movie actors and Arnold and all these guys, right? And then that naturally took me down another route that I found that
Mhm.
I was really interested in. And when I look back on my life, I never liked reading before, but when I was a teenager, I was always going online and reading articles about fitness and working out and bodybuilding and how to get better at this thing. So I naturally just gravitated towards it, and reading was, I didn't even think about it. It
Yeah.
was a necessity and part of the process. And I enjoyed it because I was getting something out of it. Then following that, working out and improving my fitness and trying to build, a better version of myself, but externally,
Yeah. Yeah.
visually,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
But then I started going down that rabbit hole, just like I did with sports, and going as deep as I could. And then that's what got me into personal training.
Yeah,
And
and you're a certified strength and conditioning coach, right?
correct, right. And doctor of physical therapy, because
Mhm.
same thing, I just kept wanting to learn more and more and more. But in the time of working at the gym, it was funny because now I'm working with people as the early 20s at that time. I'm working with people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s.
Yeah.
And then I start realizing
Yeah.
that
It's not.
what's that?
No, go ahead. I'm just trying to I'm tracking with you.
That it became more about the physical. I was helping them a lot in their life
Yeah.
without really even knowing it. And even along that time, it was starting to pick up more personal development books and self-improvement books because of the experiences that I had that you brought me into, which is cool how these things go around, and it
Full
was just,
circle.
again, one of those really kind of like an aha moment that the physical
Yeah.
is great, but it's just another vehicle, just like reading or just like all these other things that we'll talk about that you could use on the road to personal development. And we
Here's
can
a
use as many different vehicles as possible.
here's a question for you, one that I've never asked you. Do you feel like age and time has changed your perspective in these fields that you've been in? In not the fields, but obviously you've been involved with physical fitness from an early age. How has that transformation been like moving forward? Because obviously you're growing too, and you're aging, but you worked with people of all different ages. So like, how do you feel that age and time and maybe not age, but like time and like, how does that shift your perspective in in all facets of life, I guess?
It's funny because I think on the surface, most people would agree that time can be a big influence. Whereas
Hmm.
we get older, we naturally get wiser. But I also don't think that that's necessarily the case. You can get older and make the same mistakes over and over and over, and you're just digging yourself deeper into a hole rather than actually getting more wise and learning from your mistakes.
Yeah, they should say time reinforces habits, regardless if they're good or bad.
Absolutely. And I would say that going back to what we were talking about as fitness being one vehicle, learning about meditation and spirituality and breath work and all these other things that are some people might think of as woo woo and this and that. But to me, the physical, the mental, and the spiritual have all been equally as important. But as it relates to your question, the spiritual even more so, because the more I've attempted, right, or worked on removing my ego,
Yeah.
has changed over time. Because I can be even more arrogant and less humble, if you will, over time, because I'm learning more and more and more and more and more and more, which could give me more reasons as to why I know what I'm talking about, and you need to listen to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus having the other perspective of, holy shit, the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know.
Yeah.
And you can
Yeah.
have,
Being in that student mentality, it's so important. I mean, we are born with 2 ears and one mouth for a reason.
yeah, for sure. And also realizing that I'm not the only one.
Hmm.
If I'm working with somebody, there's two of us. And if I'm
Hmm.
working with them, what's going to help them? Rather than me having a pedestal that I can just speak to all these things that I've learned over the years with fancy degrees or certifications or
Yeah.
whatever, rather than, and I heard this a long time ago and it always stuck with me, which was creating a workout routine for somebody. Let's just look at it on an isolated topic, but creating a workout routine for somebody is more of an art than a science anyway. And
Mm.
the more I worked with people, the more that's a truth in my mind. Because I can say this is going to be the most optimal for X is going to be the most optimal for Y. But they go,
Yeah.
yeah, but my life is busy. I don't really like that kind of workout. So,
Yeah, you could either like try to force it down their throats where nothing's going to happen, or
right.
learn to meet them where they're at, which is like such a valuable lesson just in life, is meet people where they're at, because that's where like I think that's where the invitation to change or transformation can present itself. You know, like somebody has a want to change or want to lead a better life or do better, whatever you want to call it, but you're never you're never gonna force somebody to change, you know?
Right. And so for me to, like you said, force it down somebody's throat, that's only my ego coming into play
Yeah.
rather than trying to separate myself, right? Or like the lower mind's version of the self, who I
Yeah.
am, of what I'm trying to do. And even in some ways get some validation out of being able to help somebody and improve somebody else's life rather than trying to approach it from a higher self perspective, which is just allowing the space
Yeah.
to be a supporting role for this person that's developing on their own.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
you're there, but it should be their path.
yeah, absolutely. So on that topic, like some could say, what we're doing right now is something like I think not everybody does something like this um, for the reason to essentially help and benefit other people. I think there is a lot more people doing that. Um, some could say that we're on a pedestal right now talking whatever. That's what we're trying to do. Like for you, I want to hear, why is it important to be doing this? Being on video, putting out there in the world, regardless if people watch it or not. Like, can you give your reasoning as to why you think this is important, and kind of moving forward for this whole journey?
Yeah, and there's two things that one in particular I've always thought about, and the second one has been recent. And the first one is, it seems like an incredibly big waste of time. I think it was a Carl Sagan quote back in the day where they said, "Do you think aliens exist?" And he was, I could be wrong, but I think it was him, and he said, if they don't, or if there's nothing else out there, the universe seems like an incredibly big waste of space.
Yeah,
So for me, I
that's a good
felt
one.
like all the things that I've done up to this point seems like an incredibly
Mm.
big waste of time if all of this information is just stuck with me.
Yeah.
especially if it's things that have been helping me out.
Yeah.
I know these things have helped me transform my life in one way or another.
Hmm.
It should be able to help at least one person.
Yeah. And is that the goal for you?
Yeah, for sure. And again, because what else is there? And at a
Yeah.
certain level, it is selfish because I want to help people, and
Hmm.
that makes me feel good. And I want to feel like I have purpose in my life and fulfillment in my life. Now, I do have purpose and fulfillment when it comes to me working on myself. Like I want to continue growing, whether it's
Yeah.
mentally, physically, or spiritually. I just think that's what we're put here for. We're always going in a direction, and you can steer that direction. Just like a rowboat or a sailboat going down the river, it's going to keep its flow until
Hmm.
you.
Yeah.
But
I mean, like Tony Robbins says too, it's like it, you're either growing or you're dying. There's no standing still. It's
for
an
sure,
interesting point that people think, well, if I just stay here, I'll be I'll be happy and comfortable and safe. I mean, I guess for some people it may work out, but I think we're a little different in that sense where even if it's 1% every day, however you're going to quantify that, but it's just not even it's the striving to be a better person or better or search for more or just the desire to want to be curious and learn new things and I don't know. It's such an interesting thing because it seems like it should be so simple, but it's not. Like it is and it isn't at the same time. Like back to the black and white and living in the gray. Um, yeah, it's just an interesting thing, I feel like, for a lot of people.
for sure. And so the second part of that is even if no one watches,
Yeah.
regardless, even if it doesn't turn out the way that we had originally designed or desired it to, is that it's always been something that scared me. And
Yeah.
doing those things or putting your ideas out there is very uncomfortable. But there's also on the other side of that, you're so much better off.
Yeah, for
There's a
sure.
certain freedom that's going to come with it, regardless of what happens. And for me, that's also part of the striving. And I just want to remove as many attachments, if you will, to pain or fear as I can. And if this
Yeah.
is just the next one in this phase of my life, then it
So
just seems
be it.
that's the road you have to go down.
Yeah.
If it's it's a paradox because internally and in the moment, everything's telling you not to do it. It's dangerous. You'll die.
Yeah.
Like, and in some cases, you literally feel like you're literally going to die if you do this.
Yeah.
But I think you have to.
Yeah.
And so you are dying. It's just a version of yourself that's dying. And then there's another one coming in. So this is me killing myself.
Yeah. Me too. I think this is a much better version of that. It's interesting.
Yeah. 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 It's
I
better
think
for you.
there's more truth in like in that Tony Robbins quote than I think I've ever realized until now. It's it, if you're not growing, you're dying. But if you're growing, you're also dying because you have to shed that skin and you have to grow into that different person. Like you have to take that next step, and maybe that's what's implied in there is is you know the pursuit of growth. Because we talked about this the other day. It's like the most important thing I think for the both of us is one more step, one more step, one more step, one more step. Because I think if you focus too much on the end result, the body, the wealth, the money, whatever it is, the righteousness, I think you like rob yourself, and I'm sure we've heard it a ton, but it's just like that cliche that rings true, you know? It's like it's in the journey. And I think that's something that takes a lot of practice and a lot of effort and intention to just be here. Because I think a lot of the times we want to be there or we want to be back there. And I think it takes more discipline, energy, and effort. But with that, like you said, comes a sense of freedom too. Because I think when you do the hard things, somehow, some way, you're rewarded. And I agree with you. Like the spirituality is so important because you're just acting in faith on a daily basis. You're either acting in faith or fear. And and I just think it's harder to act in faith because fear is just the natural response. But it's once you learn to practice it, it's just so much more rewarding. What do you think?
For sure. I just was thinking about, as you were saying that, the faith or fear, which is a really great point. And it's just the framing of it. Like when they talk about humans have a really interesting conundrum because just the thought alone, because we have this higher intelligence, and with that higher intelligence, a thought alone can put us in a state of survival and just flood our body with stress. And
Hmm.
so the only difference between going on a roller coaster, which internally everything is the same as you thinking somebody's following you and it's late at night and you have to take a left turn down a hallway or alleyway. Physiologically, it's the exact same thing, but one's fun.
Yeah, yeah.
One feels like you're going to die. So you leave one feeling rejuvenated and, oh man, let's run over here and jump on the next one. And the other one is, I'm going to run home and lock my door and I'm not going to leave for, however long, right? Depending on how
Yeah.
it scares you. And so that framing is really important because even with the faith and fear, you can only feel one emotion at a time. So if you choose faith, you're superseding fear. Even though you have a little bit of that same anxious or anxiety feelings in
Hmm.
physiologically, but your interpretation of it can change everything because it's the faith that things are going to work out. And this feeling I have within me is the transformation taking place,
Yeah.
right? The alchemy, if you will. Everything that it's turning inside, but now it's going to be transmuted into something positive, rather than fear is just instead of growing, it's the dying.
Yeah. So that made me think of a question. How much control do we have over our lives? And what do we have control of? You know, like people say like, "Oh, I just feel like I can't really I don't really have a handle on what's going on or I can't like I think that's a lot of people's fear is that they think they should be in control. What is that like how does that work in your life and how do you go about whether you're in control or not in control?
I think we have a lot of control, but the control is internal, not external. And
Yeah.
that's where faith comes in again, because I also think that it's very comforting to have a belief that things are going to work out, even though right now none of it does, or that I don't know how all these cards are going to play out, but when I have faith that it's going to play out as it should, regardless of what I want, if it's what I need and I believe it's going to be for what I need, then I have control over my present moment
Hmm.
to just surrender and sit back and let life do its thing.
I have control to surrender. I love it.
It's kind of
It's
it's like when people are negative all the time, right? And just they see lack everywhere. They just have an abundance of lack.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Like I'm living in abundance. Oh yeah, what an abundance of lack.
Of lack, yeah. Well, it's so true, and I think people just
but where's the framing?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's the thing. You have to have control of one thing, and it's the framing. Framing of your it's really only of yourself. You can only control what you're doing in your life and how you react to things. Because I feel like
Sure.
people are so quick to react because just in our lizard brain, that's what we did. We reacted all the time. And I think,
Can I add one more thing that
yeah,
just
please.
what you're saying, because it's a great point and I think it's a really good topic. But I saw this was a long time ago, and I thought it was really interesting how angles play a huge perspective. It was just it was this woman that was just in one frame, and it was dark, but the light was there was a light that was just going all the way around her face, and it was funny how in some positions of the light she looked really bad. In some positions of the light, it's like she looked like a supermodel. It was amazing. So,
Yeah,
like we're talking about with these situations, it can be the same frame, but there's just the subtlest different angle, right? Or you just shift your perspective by
yeah,
this angle, and it turns a bad image into the best one of the whole of all of possibilities, right?
yeah.
It relates to that.
And there's so many examples of that in life. Like we both play golf, so it's like if you hit the ball 1 degree off, you're not gonna land 1 degree off where the ball's landing. You're gonna be like you,
Yeah,
however far away, you're gonna be way off trajectory where you thought you were going. And there's just so many examples in the real world, in physics, which I don't understand, but which you just you see these examples of where a little change isn't necessarily a little change. Or like that example, I've seen it recently of, I'm sure you've seen it, where the teacher comes in with a jar and he puts in the big rocks. Is this full? Students say yes. Then he puts in all the little pebbles and shakes it in. Is this full? Yes, now it's full. Then he grabs the sand and he puts the sand in. Is it full? It must surely be full now. Yeah, it's full. Then he grabs the water and it's like it's all these little,
okay.
and then he explains like the big things are you can go watch it, but the big things are the things that are important to you, your family, your time, your friends. The little pebbles are work, um, your house, like all those things. The sand is all the decisions that you're going to make and things around you, and then the water is everything else. And he's like, would it have worked the same way if we put the water in first and then try to put the big rocks or the pebble? Like it only works in that order. So it's just it's perspective on, and I feel like I've had that much more since having kids. It's like right now I have my kid's little toy car in front of me, and it just reminds me like, what do I want to do in this life where he's gonna look up at me or my daughters are gonna look up at me and like I'm like getting emotional. Like, w what's gonna make them look internally and like want to become a better version of themselves, respect themselves, love themselves, appreciate themselves, um, have faith in themselves. Like, I don't know. It's just that's like what we're here for, I think.
Yeah, and going again, just following this along the same thread, it reminds me of Jim Carrey. It's funny because growing up, I always liked him because he was super goofy, and as a kid, those are the things that I thought was funny. And then
Yeah.
growing up and seeing him for the person, not the characters that he's playing, and understanding the difference a little bit more of how much of a deep thinker he is.
Hmm.
One of the things that always stood out to me was I think he was giving a graduation speech, and he said,
Yeah.
I learned a lot of very good lessons from my father, and not the least of which was you could fail at what you don't want to do, so you might as well take a chance on faith.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that one. We were talking earlier, we're going to wrap this up soon, so we'll kind of lead or end with this message, but we were talking earlier and trying to figure out just what more than that, because obviously we know where we've been in communication for, I mean, we've been friends since kindergarten and first grade, riding on the bus together, but because we do want this to eventually be seen by other people, hopefully. Like we're doing this for ourselves, but ultimately it would be a lie if we said we didn't want other people to learn and benefit from our experiences, our information, whatever it may be, relatability. And you asked me a question. You said, "What do you think leads people to um, the first step in, something like this? What leads people the first step in transformation from the inside out?" And I said, "I think it's um, I'm having a little bit of it was two words that I said. It's
Basically, it was from negativity.
yeah, it was
Negative
oh my gosh, I can't remember it. They started with a D, but it was
desire.
defeat, defeat and desire. And we I think there's a combination of both always. And and it's just an interesting, when I was talking about my kids, I thought, well, maybe there's a third. And maybe that's just watching somebody and learning the right way, right? Because I think a lot of people find themselves where they're at and want to blame their childhood or want to blame their past experiences, um, and the illusion of how that makes them feel right now in this moment, how it disables them from moving forward. And it's just an interesting thing because I think even if you're taught right and you have a good example, it just shows how much those decisions are from within. And so like for me and what I'm leading to is like I want people to see this, or I want when I talk to people, I want them to know and understand that like everybody's going through something. And you're going to experience both. You're going to experience defeat and you're going to experience desire. But I think when you feel really, really, really defeated, I know we've had conversations where we've been in that place in our lives, and that just felt like something needs to change. I don't know what that is. And you could still be in that mindset of like, it's not even me. Like everything else in this world needs to change around me. And then my life will be better. But I think as long as you have the question and that curiosity of like, what is going on? I can't live like this anymore. That's when like change starts to occur. What's your opinion?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I definitely feel like it can come from either perspective, but I definitely feel like the driving force is much stronger when it is from negative emotions or feeling like you're at rock
Yeah.
bottom, can't get any lower. And it reminds me of I think it was a Maya Angelou quote, and she said, "You could face defeat, but you don't have to be defeated."
Hmm.
So life can beat you up, right? And you can feel like everything around you, like you're saying, that needs to change, or you, in your perspective, if everything around me changes, then I will be better. But you just find more of what you see. It
Yeah.
never does until, and going back to what you were saying about your kids, is would they benefit from growing up in a household where they just see their dad succeeding at everything and never has any problems or anything else? That's a much more unrealistic way of looking at life. Or even on the other side, a dad that goes through challenges, fails from time to time, but yet he always has this perspective or this mindset that things are going to get better, or has faith and is working on himself to improve his situation rather than blaming everybody else for what's going on. I mean, I would say that those lessons are much more valuable to foster their upbringing than just giving them everything that they could ever want, right? Or a
Yeah.
nice house, a nice school, all these things. Like they they also need to learn that life is challenging.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
Disney movies.
And what better way to introduce them to it than the person that they love the most,
For
one
sure.
of the persons.
They're going to pick it up anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd rather it come from me, 100%. So in wrapping up, I want to ask you a question. And I think it's something that is important because like we've been talking about this whole time, we can be in different seasons, we can have different perspectives because of the time. We could either be growing or dying, whatever, all these things. What is something this last week that you had a little bit of difficulty with, and what did you do to reframe and kind of live with it uncomfortably or push through it, or are you still feeling it? Like what is that thing this last week?
As much as I try to be easygoing, there are things in my life that I am very controlling over, and I think in some ways it's I've been working on trying to figure out like what it stems from, and so in the last week it was, obviously we're both in different time zones and you're busy with work and life and everything else and it's hard to keep up, and so there comes to a point where it's like, okay, are we going to do this thing or not? And I haven't heard
Yeah.
anything. And this is going back and forth. Is it even going to happen? So there's this controlling part of me that goes, okay, well, whatever, I'll just do it on my own.
Yeah.
Even if it doesn't work, like I'll just do it myself. But then there's also the other part of it, which is, well, let's just see how it goes.
Hmm.
Because you can create all these scenarios and none of them ever happen, right? But like a Stoic quote that said, when you suffer before it's necessary, you suffer more than necessary by creating all these things in
Yeah.
your mind before any of it ever even happens and you're never right about it. And so for me, it's just been letting go of whatever that is. And I haven't figured it out yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, there is that the two sides of it where it when it happens, that's all there is. Other
Hmm.
things in life, things can happen and I could recognize it and reframe it right away and I can just move on. But there are certain things in my life where I don't have that awareness built up yet to where
Yeah.
that reaction time is spread out much further than what it could be. And so to me, that's also a bigger life lesson as well, because in what other aspects of my life is that happening more subtly, that it's even deeper subconsciously, that I don't pick it up.
Yeah.
What about
Yeah. And I think and I think it's okay that you don't.
and what about you? What about in the last week? I think that's a great question.
I'm gonna keep it short because I think we're gonna run out of time here, but basically simplify and just being present and intentional. I think those three things with work, my wife, with my kids, and with my life in general, just something that I value tremendously. And I think it helps me break the noise of everything else and not react and not get caught up in all these things. I mean, I found myself multiple times this week telling my wife, like, hey, it's okay. It's okay that the kid's crying. It's okay that, because none of it's really in the bigger scope of things. It's a blip. And I think zooming out helps a lot with that kind of stuff. So,
It's a very good point.
Travis, I freaking love you, man.
Oh, you too, man.
I'm so glad we're doing this and I'm excited.
Same.